going on, vinyl community? Welcome to another video with the Record Spinner. In today's video, I am going to be partaking in the 2023 Vinyl Tag. Yes, a new year is upon us, which means it is also Vinyl Tag season, a series of 20 questions that provide a sort of show and tell, getting to know you type of incentive when it comes to vinyl community members and their respective collections. And as of lately, the Vinyl Tag has kind of gone in different directions, because normally it was Tales from the Crate that kind of got the ball rolling, and then everybody else would follow suit. And since he kind of dropped off the face of the vinyl community planet, everyone just kind of does their own thing. There was a metal tag at one point, and then there was a few other vinyl tags that people were kind of just sticking by. But when all of this was going on last year, the youngest members of the VC, which is a group that consists of myself, Emma at 8 Vinyl Low, Marikan at Marikan's Music, and Jenna at Spins and Needles, we decided to kind of have a crack at creating our own tag, and overall got a rather pleasing response. A couple of people had followed suit and did their own entries using our template, and we figured that we would have another crack at it this year. Thus, we are calling this particular vinyl tag the Youngest Members of the VC Edition. So enough of the chit-chat, let's jump into what this video is all about. Number 1, a St. Louis related record. Now, I very well could have picked a record that I purchased when I was in St. Louis with the youngest members of the VC. That was where we did our last big summer trip. But I decided to kind of stick to something a little bit more unique, and I took a look in my collection to see if I could find a record with a St. Louis connection, whether the band is from St. Louis or if it was recorded there. And sure enough, what I chose is this Alice Cooper bootleg. This is called Back in the USA, and the core of this bootleg consists of a live show that was recorded at the St. Louis Annex Arena in St. Louis, Missouri on December 17th, 1971 during the Killer Tour. It is a phenomenal soundboard recording, so if you love early 70s Alice Cooper group type stuff, then you will absolutely love this. So that is my St. Louis related record. Number 2, album that starts with an N. Now, this is kind of alluding to where we plan on going this summer for our next big yearly summer trip. We're not going to disclose where we're going until the time comes, but I guess to drop this little subtle hint, an album that I have that starts with an N is No Pussyfooting by Robert Fripp and Brian Eno. Of course, Robert Fripp being of King Crimson, Brian Eno, who had his start with Roxy Music, done his own solo stuff, has worked with David Bowie and a whole bunch of other artists, did this great album of just electronic ambient music, just full of various loops, and Fripp doing what Fripp does best, and just providing some nice instrumental textures. Just a great album to just kind of vibe out to. Good stuff here. Number 3, where would you want the youngest members of the VC to visit? So obviously, we've had tons of discussions just about various hypothetical locations as to where we could do future trips down the line. And of course, they're all residing within the US, since that is where we are based out of. But if I was to pick a city of my own choosing, I am going to shoot large and say that one place that I would love to visit with the youngest members of the VC is London, England. Just down to the musical DNA of our favorite bands and genres, that is hallowed ground for a lot of acts that we admire and love. So being able to kind of visit hallowed ground for those things would be such a thrill. And hell, just all the music touristy stuff, visit Abbey Road, the Battersea Power Station where Pink Floyd's Animals album cover was shot, the various recording studios, record stores, venues like the Hammersmith Odeon. I mean, it's not Hammersmith Odeon anymore, but you basically get what I mean. There is a lot of culture there that would be so awesome to dig into. So you never know, we might be hopping on a jet across the pond, as they say, and checking that out. But I don't know, fingers crossed. Would be nice. Number 4, favorite summer road trip album. For this, I picked Grandparents, Sincerely Bagman. I've talked about this album before on the channel once. This band is based out of Portland, Oregon, or was based out of Portland. They were together for a number of years. They cut this one album, and then right when this came out, the band basically broke up. And it's such a shame, because all there is just this. And this is such a great summertime psych pop album. You can just roll the windows down or have the top down and just enjoy this record. But also, the main reason why I discovered this album was because of the bass player, Sonny Ferris, went on to do a band called Blackwater Holy Light, which is one of my favorite modern bands. And this was the band that she had before them. So just by association, that's the main reason why I checked this out. But just to kind of title in with the youngest members, when I was on the plane flying out to O'Hare, when we went to St. Louis, O'Hare is in Illinois, but then we went down to St. Louis, I had this album on repeat while I was on the plane, so kind of ties it all in somehow. Such a great album. Check it out if you haven't heard it already. Number 5, Best Music Discovery from 2022. Now, this can kind of be a double-sided question. It could be a new music discovery, a new artist, or an older artist that you just finally approached. And for myself, I gotta say the best music discovery for me for the past year was XTC. I was already a huge fan of the 2 Dukes of Stratosphere releases, but I just never delved into XTC's main catalog since the Dukes were just a side project. And I picked up a sort of primer of this album, Black Sea, which is my favorite of theirs so far, English Settlement, and Skylarking, and these guys just create art pop perfection between the songwriting power of Andy Partridge, Colin Moulding, and then you have Dave Gregory's amazing instrumentation as a musician. They just crafted some phenomenal work. Extremely underrated, you know, a band that's had hits, like they've had notable songs that were big in their home country as well as the US, but just, you know, not up there in like the pantheon of just, you know, huge acts from England around that sort of period where punk and new wave were just really emerging in post-punk. So, you know, these guys have always kind of been somewhat the underdogs, but seriously, their catalog is such a thrill to listen to. I'm still diving into it, and hopefully, I don't know, who knows, maybe this year I'll complete my XTC collection and get everything just to get it all out of the way since I am a completist. But so far, hands down my best music discovery from 2022. Number 6, an album with an animal on the cover. Now, I could have easily just picked the easy route and picked Pink Floyd's Adam Hart Mother just by default, but I decided to dive deep and just have as much variety as possible to reflect how vast my collection is and also the bands that I love. And the album that I chose for this one is Rush Signals from 1982. This is probably my favorite 80s Rush album, and obviously, as you can tell, there is a Dalmatian right by a fire hydrant, so there's your animal on a cover for you. Number 7, a favorite album with cheap or trick in the title. I wonder who thought of that prompt. For this one, I went ahead and picked AC/DC's Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. This right here was actually the first proper AC/DC album that I ever purchased. I got it on CD first back, God, I want to say 10 years ago on CD. That was when I first decided to dive into their catalog. And of all places, I bought it at a Rite Aid pharmacy store back when they sold decent CDs. They might still do. I haven't been there in a long time. But I got it for a cheap price just because I figured, you know what? It's classic AC/DC. It's one of their signature songs. It's Bon Scott era. I would just pick it up and just kind of start from there. And sure enough, you know, I grew an immense love for AC/DC back at a time where I just thought, you know, yeah, every song sounds the same. You hear once, you hear them all. But you realize that, yeah, they all sound the same, but they're great at what they do. And they're a band that when it comes to a new album or just if you're seeking out something, you won't be disappointed because you know what you're going to get. So there's my album with cheap or trick in the title. Number 8, an album that gives you nostalgia. For me, I picked one of my middle school favorites, and that is Kaiser Chiefs' Employment. This album came out back in 2005, very much a part of that sort of that indie rock, I guess, revival type thing that was going on at the time with bands like The Strokes and Franz Ferdinand. And then here comes this band from Leeds, just serving up almost it's funny now in retrospect, because I listen to XTC now, and I hear things, I'm like, oh, I can see where the Kaiser Chiefs may have gotten that. Very much, you know, taking a lot of influence from that late 70s sort of punk, new wave, post-punk type of, you know, vein. And for myself, I discovered the Kaiser Chiefs in 2008 with Guitar Hero 3, the video game, which had the song Ruby on it. And that was on their second album, Yours Truly Angry Mob. But this one just evokes tons of nostalgia because I remember I got this for my birthday back in 2008 on CD. And I just absolutely devoured it. And I remember at the time I was listening to this. I met my one of my best friends, Donovan, on the first day of middle school. Him and I started a band together. And in hindsight, we were basically like a Kaiser Chiefs tribute band because we literally would play all the songs that appeared on this record. I mean, hell, there's a song on here called Born to Be a Dancer, which we performed at our middle school talent show when we were in the 6th grade, which is just such a thrill. And then one of the first songs that we ever played together is a song on here called Saturday Night. And then just other tracks on here. Every Day I Love You Less and Less, I Predict a Riot, Modern Way, oh my god, like those are some of the notable singles off of this album. Just such a great record, and it's a shame, like when it comes to the Kaiser Chiefs now, you know, they're known for the old hits, so they're playing a lot of stuff off of this album and Yours Truly Angry Mob. But this album just brings me back to just a very simple, easy time back when I was in middle school and had not a care in the world. Number 9, Kissin' Time. Show a Kiss record. Wonder who thought of that one. I could have picked a dozen different Kiss records, but I decided to showcase one of the cooler pieces that I have, and one that I just truly love so much. This is a vinyl pressing of the compilation Greatest Kiss. This originally came out back in 1996 on CD. They did a vinyl pressing of it in 2014 for the Kissteria vinyl box. It was one of the exclusive pieces. People were reselling it for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. But Kiss Online, back last year in 2022, did an anniversary pressing of it, only available through Kiss Online. Comes with this nice sort of almost foil matte gloss finish to it. And the track list was different in different countries, so they kind of did like a composite and included all the songs that were featured on the various versions. And this comp, honestly, while it only covers like the original lineup years from 73 to 79, well, actually technically 1980, because Peter appears on the cover of Unmasked, you get all the hits, and then you also get some cool deep cuts. So, like, you of course you get, like, Detroit Rock City, Love Gun, Deuce, Shock Me, but you get things like Going Blind, Plaster Caster, Flaming Youth, Two Sides of the Coin. It covers good ground for both the casual fan and the hardcore fan. So, you know, I would go as far as to venture to say that this is one of the best Kiss compilations out there in a world where there are many Kiss compilations. And just for the sake of showing, this comes on sort of smoky colored vinyl, as you can see there. Just an absolute phenomenal piece, and it's one of my most prized Kiss vinyl pressings, just down to the exclusivity and also the stellar track list as well. Number 10, favorite colored vinyl pressing. Now, I, for myself, am a huge fan of colored vinyl. It's nice to deviate from the norm of standard black. If there's a colored variant, I will go after it. Very hard to pick a favorite colored vinyl press, though, and I have a lot of interesting, unique variants out there of things. But for the one that I chose for this tag is Judas Priest Rockarola. This is the most latest reissue of it. It's been redone a couple of different times by various labels, since this album and Sad Wings of Destiny are like the two Priest albums that are kind of outside their traditional catalog, where just various labels will license it and just get their hands on it. But this latest reissue comes pressed on rather cool colored vinyl. And this is honestly one of the selling points that made me get this, kind of just on impulse, because I love Judas Priest, and I figured I would approach this album at some point. But when I saw the colored variant, I was like, yeah, that's a prime time. So this comes pressed on white inside purple vinyl with black splatter. Now the white really shows better on side B. On side A, it kind of looks a little better. I think if you shine it into the light, the effect really looks really solid. So I don't know, it's kind of like an egg right in the middle of purple vinyl. But yes, that is indeed one of my favorite pieces of colored vinyl vinyl in my collection. Number 11, show your favorite 7-inch that's in your collection. I am personally not a huge fan of 7 inches. Yes, I do collect them, but it's not a format that I go to often. In most cases, like, I literally have a stack of 7 inches that I've yet to play or clean or sleeve. Like, they're just sitting there, and I know I have to tackle it at some point. I mean, it's honestly mainly because I love Third Man Records, and they do a lot of 7-inch pressings. But this right here that I'm going to show is a very cool piece. So this right here is the split Ghost and Volbeat 7-inch that I purchased at the merch booth when they did their co-headline tour. This was back in February of last year. Now, what's crazy with this is that this is limited to 3,000 copies, and they sold 115 copies per show on the tour on a first-come, first-served basis. People were not allowed to buy multiples. It's strict one copy per person until they sold out. And literally, like, I remember my father and we got to the venue relatively early. They let us in, and we just made a beeline right for the merch booth. This was the one piece of merch that I really wanted because, while the $40 t-shirt is nice, if you wear it too much, it basically just wears out, and you have this that'll last you a lifetime. So I was very lucky to get my hands on a copy, and my dad has a copy as well, but his is still sealed. I opened mine up. I'll showcase it. This comes on clear vinyl, and they also do covers of Metallica songs from the Black Album. So Ghost does Enter Sandman, which they actually played live, which was a very good rendition of it. And Volbeat did Don't Tread on Me. And copies for this on Discogs, on average, like, you can easily, I bought it for, like, what was it, 15, 20 bucks? People were selling it for $100 to this day on Discogs. So it's definitely a very cool piece. And also the nice thing is that all the proceeds that were received for this 7-inch went straight to charity. So bought it for a good cause in mind. Number 12, an album you got out of state / province. So this past year in 2022, I did a lot of traveling. I went to St. Louis with the youngest members. I went to Las Vegas to witness my best friend Chelsea, aka the record spinnerette, get married. I'm going to mention her later on in a different prompt in this tag. And I also went on the road with a Genesis tribute band called The Genesis Show, and we did gigs around Cleveland and the Pittsburgh area. But for this, I opted to pick a record that I picked up in Las Vegas. I went to Zia Records, which is almost like the Southwest equivalent of what the Northeast has with Bull Moose in terms of being like a jack-of-all-trades kind of shop with music, movies, pop culture, all that stuff. And I picked up The Beths, Auckland, New Zealand, 2020. This is a live album that this band did in their home country in New Zealand. Great indie pop type stuff. If you like stuff like Always and such, then you'll like these guys. But just to kind of hone in on the whole traveling aspect, since I got this at Zia, this is a Zia Records exclusive pressing, which comes pressed on sort of, kind of looks to be like light orangish goldish colored vinyl, which is rather cool. And I have the Beth's album Jump Rope Gazers. They have a couple other ones that I don't have, but when I saw this and that it was an exclusive, it was definitely more of an incentive to pick up a rather unique piece during my stay in Vegas. Number 13, show a bootleg. If you're a fan of my channel, you know that I love me some bootlegs. I am a massive bootleg collector, and I could have almost picked anything. Hell, I kind of feel wrong for showcasing the Alice Cooper bootleg first, but there's that strong St. Louis connection. So the bootleg that I'm going to show is this Led Zeppelin one. So this is called Led Zeppelin circa 1975. This is actually a soundboard recording, taken from a sound check that was done at a show from 1973. And the reason why it's called circa 1975 is that you hear the band do things such as Custard Pie, Wonton Jam, and The Rover, and Night Flight, all of which are songs that would be on Physical Graffiti, which was released in 1975. And then you have Side 2, and the band's just having fun doing a whole bunch of rock and roll standards by Chuck Berry, and rockabilly stuff like Move On Down the Line, Shakin' All Over, all good stuff. This is a rather interesting bootleg to have, and I really wanted to pick a bootleg that had recordings that were never destined for release, because, yeah, I could have picked, like, a bootleg of, you know, studio outtakes or different mixes and such, but no, I decided to go truly unique and showcase a cool sound check soundboard recording from the almighty Zeppelin. Number 14, The Perfect Winter Album. Now, I guess maybe this could bleed in with like Christmas territory since Christmas takes place in winter, but I decided to opt for something a little different, one that I think maybe some people will see eye to eye with me on. I'm going to opt for some Genesis. This is their album, Wind and Wuthering. And this just has such a beautiful, romantic, just kind of winter-esque quality to it. Hell, just down to even like the cover art, how it has that shade of like ash and white. It just looks very wintry almost. So, and just coupled with the music, like you have epics like 11th Earl of Mar. One for the Vine is particularly such a beautiful song with great musical moments. Your Own Special Way, one of the band's earliest ballads. Afterglow, Blood on the Rooftop, Steve Hackett's shining moment with the band, and also his last major one since he left the band after this record. Just an absolutely gorgeous album, and it's one that just kind of gets me right in the winter spirit during the time of year, so I'll put this album on the old turntable. Number 15, a favorite album from an Illinois band and/or artist. There's a lot of good representation of Illinois in my record collection with things such as Cheap Trick and REO Speedwagon, but I decided to opt for one of my favorite Illinois bands, and that is Styx. And this right here is my favorite album of theirs. This is Equinox. This came out back in 74, 75. This was their first album on A&M after they were signed with the indie label Wooden Nickel. And on this one, you have things such as Light Up, Lorelei, Mother Dear, Lonely Child. Like, those two tracks are, like, you can see where a lot of Queen influence really delved in with their sound. Sweet Mountain Blue is a great one as well. Just some great American prog. There is that debate whether, you know, prog is strictly a British genre. While there have been some American spin-offs, such as, like, you know, Kansas and Styx and such, while Styx definitely has a lot more classic rock radio friendly stuff with things like Come Sail Away, Renegade, Blue Collar Man, this early stuff is phenomenal, and like I said, this is my favorite Styx album. Good stuff. Number 16, an album from a friend. So for this, I chose a record that was given to me by my good friend Patrick. He is also a fellow co-worker with me at the record store that we both work at. And he gifted me for Christmas back in 2021 this album by a band called Tomorrow. This came out back in 1968, just right in that whole movement of just, you know, psychedelic rock bands that were emerging from England. The notable track on here is called My White Bicycle. There's also a cool cover of Strawberry Fields Forever. If you're into Sgt. Pepper Magical Mystery Tour tinged Baroque pop, then you will love this. But one of the main reasons why he gifted it to me, obviously it's an album that he loves, and Pat and I, we were kind of going back and forth as to who was going to get this record because we both wanted it, but he decided to gift it to me because A, it's an album that he does love, but also there is a Yes connection here on the back cover because this band features a pre-Yes Steve Howe. So he knows that I'm a big Yes guy as well, so he knew that I would appreciate that aspect perhaps more than he does. Anyways, it's a phenomenal gift, something very righteous from Patrick, so thank you very much. Number 17, favorite reissue from 2022. Now, this was tricky because I could have gone in different directions with this. I mean, because, of course, we had the Beatles Revolver box set. We had the Beach Boys Sail On Sailor set. We also had the Kiss Creatures of the Night set, which, to be honest, let's face it, that was probably my favorite. But because there was a Kiss representation already, I had to pick something else. So I went next in command. And my favorite, second favorite reissue of 2022 was the Pink Floyd Animals 2018 mix. It has been stated for a number of years that this was in the works, and it was held up just because of something silly such as liner notes being included with the package. Ridiculous. But for a lot of people think that, this album could have benefited from a remix just because it had a sort of murky production value, which I think in turn adds to the album's charm, just given the dystopian, Orwellian, themes that lie with this record, with society being broken up into species of animals, dogs, pigs, and sheep. This remix just breathes in some new life. The drums sound fresh. The way that it's just mixed, it just sounds more spatial. It's just a nice little facelift given to one of Pink Floyd's greatest works, one of my top favorite Floyd albums, and I'm just glad that it finally came out for us fans to enjoy. Phenomenal stuff here. Number 18, an album that you didn't expect to love so much from a band/artist you normally don't listen to. For this, I know I've talked about this before on the channel. I am going to opt with Panic at the Disco's Pretty Odd. Now, I am not the hugest Panic at the Disco fan, simply because, I don't know, I don't run out and seek it for myself. My ex-girlfriend was a huge fan of this band, and one of the interesting things is that Panic's sound, evolved from album to album. Each album had its own distinctive character and taste. And I will say, the vocalist Brendan Urie is absolutely talented, has a great set of pipes. But I remember at the time, they had released an album. This was back in, I want to say 2018, and she was showing me bits of their discography from, first album up until the present, and when we got to the tracks off Pretty Odd, my ears perked entirely, because this is heavily influenced by mid-60s Baroque pop. There's a lot of Beatles and Beach Boys influences on this. It just has a nice little sort of whimsical type quality to it. Tracks such as 9 in the Afternoon and That Green Gentleman, Things Have Changed, Northern Downpour, Mad as Rabbits. There's just some great 60s sounding moments on this record with a slight modern twist. And it's an album that, while I do have a couple of other Panic albums that I don't really revisit much often, this is one that I will almost every time guarantee to pull off the shelf if I want to listen to some Panic. And of course, I always say that why couldn't they continue with this? But like I said, every album is different, which I understand, but they really knocked it out of the ballpark with this one. Number 19, an album that reminds you of a best friend. So, like I've mentioned many times in other videos, my best friend is Chelsea. She gives herself the moniker the Record Spinnerette, and not to pat myself on the back, but it is thanks to my passion of the vinyl format that got her into vinyl and start collecting. And the first record that I gave her for Christmas was indeed a copy of this album here. This is Taylor Swift's Folklore. I grew up with Taylor's work being so dominating on all fronts, radio, television, and everything. I always knew the hits growing up just because I was so associated with them, and I understood her talent, but it just wasn't anything that I would seek out for myself personally. But when this album came out in the summer of 2020, amidst the pandemic and everything, Chelsea just absolutely resonated with this record, and she said that it was something that I would definitely enjoy, and sure enough, she knows me rather well to know what's music, stuff that I would enjoy that's a little bit out of the norm for me. And I absolutely enjoy this record. This is the singer-songwriter album that Taylor had in her that just, it made it click for me, for her stuff musically. There's just some great moments on here. And this album means so much to Chelsea, so anytime I hear tracks off of this, I immediately think of her, and the many times that we went doing thrifting adventures in the summer of 2020 with this album on full blast. And to be honest, let's face it, if it wasn't for my friendship with Chelsea, I probably would not have Taylor Swift in my collection, and I'm sure all the hard rock and metal fans are seething that I'm showing a Taylor Swift record in this, but you know what? You gotta, you have to face up to the fact that she does have talent. There's no takeaway from that. Just saying. Number 20, last but not least, an album that transports you musically. For this is sort of in vein of what I was saying, Chelsea. This is another album that she turned me on to, I want to say around the same time as Folklore, maybe a year prior. The timeline's a little fuzzy in my head. But it's this album here. This album is called Adelso, and it is by Andres Soderstrom and Richard Javerling. I am so sorry if I mispronounced that entirely. This is an album that came out in Sweden, and it is like new age instrumental acoustic, it's almost like meditation music almost, and like just down to like the atmosphere that this record creates, just down to the sound effects of water and the light instrumentation and the beautiful chord progressions and the sparseness of it. It takes you on a trip. And I was very lucky to snag a copy of this on Discogs. Yes, it came all the way from Sweden because there was no American selling this, but I got it for a solid price, and this was an album that I needed to have just because there were many times that Chelsea and I would hang out at her pool and we would just float around and listen to this nonstop and just be taken aback by the whole just atmosphere of it all. So it's thanks to her that I got into this album, and it's one that indeed transports me musically. So there you guys go. That is my entry into the 2023 Vinyl Tag Youngest Members of the VC edition. Keep your eyes peeled for Emma, Jenna's, and Marikan's channels. They're most likely going to be doing their entries into this tag as well. And for any vinyl community member that is watching this and wants to take part and put an entry into this tag, you are it. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, give it a like, and subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video, and most importantly, keep the records spinning.